Welcome to Nasdaq Trade Talks. I'm Jill Malandrino, global markets reporter at Nasdaq. Joining me is Amy Lynch, founder and president of FrontLine Compliance, also former SEC and FINRA, to discuss tips for the remote chief compliance officer with firms operating in a work from home environment. Amy, it's great to have you with us. Welcome to Trade Talks.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, tell us about FrontLine.
So FrontLine Compliance is a regulatory compliance consulting firm. I started it back in 2006. I had been a regulator for both the SEC and FINRA, as well as a chief compliance officer for several firms in the private sector. So at that point, it was, what else would I do? So I started FrontLine, and we are 15 years strong now. Our client base is mostly institutional money managers, and we provide a wide range of services to those firms.
Now, you have 4 tips for the remote chief compliance officer. I'd like to tackle them individually. And the first one is connecting with IT, which I'm sure is a priority for every department, and being able to pivot as quickly as all the different lines of businesses have done is really quite remarkable.
Right. So at this point, with the COVID-19 environment that we are all in, unfortunately, workers are working remotely. And to do that successfully, they need to be able to use their devices in a way that is safe and productive for their workload. So remote CCOs need to be speaking with their IT departments on a regular basis. And that means probably at least weekly, if not more. Now that probably was needed to be more frequently in the very beginning of the remote environment. But now things have been humming along, hopefully relatively smoothly, for about the past 3 months that they have been deployed. And they can be speaking with their IT folks at least weekly still, making sure things are running smoothly. The key is checking in on the business continuity plan and the cybersecurity plan of the firm to make sure that there are no glitches, things continue to run smoothly. Right now, since we are in phase 2, at least where I am, we're going into the phase 2 of reopening. A lot of jurisdictions are doing the same. And that means they're beginning to think about how to bring the workforce back into the office. And that will mean changing, once again, how those devices are being utilized. It means bringing them back from the remote environment to back in the office. So there is a transition period that will occur when that happens. And again, that could be etc. So the return to office plan is what many firms are calling it, the RTO or RTW, return to work. Those plans are now being designed, created, and in some cases deployed and implemented. But many firms are still working remotely. And we're seeing that companies are, it really depends on their size as far as what they're doing. So the smaller firms or the newer firms even that just have a more modern take on the issue are allowing their workers to stay remote, and they're not concerned really about coming back into the office anytime soon. They want to make sure everyone is safe. Whereas the larger firms, those that are more institutionalized in our economy, have been around for over 100 years. They have a certain way of doing business, and that means being in the office for those firms. And those firms are trying to get their workforce back inside as quickly as possible.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out, because I think with work from the worker perspective, understanding what work from home looks like, and it has been quite productive in most cases, more productive than while being in the office, firms are going to have to adjust to that, because I think talent is really going to look for that flexibility, which leads to your second tip, which is communicating effectively, which is more important now than ever.
That's right. So if people are working in their homes, they are isolated, and they don't have the supervisor standing over them, watching what they're doing every day. Compliance is not sitting across from the trading pit, being able to see and overhear what is happening on a regular and routine basis. So those normal lines of communication that tend to happen when you're inside an office together, just by presence and being able to hear and see what is happening, that's gone away. So the compliance officer especially now has to be proactive in their approach to communication with the rest of the firm and the staff So they need to be talking to the employees and finding out how those employees are communicating both internally and externally outside of the firm. So are they using primarily email? Are they texting? Are they visiting chat rooms? These are questions that need to be asked. And to the extent that the firms have systems and surveillance of those activities in-house, hopefully compliance still has access to those systems and can take a look at what employees are doing, even though they are doing it remotely. And frequency of communication becomes paramount. So as a compliance officer, they need to be attending meetings. So what committees are they on, and how often are those committees meeting? That becomes crucial right now as well, because if committee meetings have been put on hold or disbanded for whatever reason, that could be very problematic in the sense that the compliance is simply not in the loop and not hearing about what is going on and what potential issues or concerns need to be addressed.
And the third tip, of course, is training. It's a whole new mindset going from working in the office to remote, and then figuring out what the hybrid role could potentially look like.
That's right. So we were recommending to our clients back in the beginning of this outbreak, which was, in March, where firms were beginning to go remote, allowing employees to work from home. And the first thing that we wanted them to do, or we recommended that they do, is have a training session. That was the perfect time to remind employees what their responsibilities were under the compliance program. So they had to know, okay, I have to still report my personal securities transactions via the system. It is accessible remotely. I can go in online and still do that activity, as well as many other requirements of reporting under the compliance program. So a good reminder training session was needed in the beginning to make sure that all employees knew what their obligations were still under the compliance program. And then, as I just said before about communication, knowing how the firm is communicating also means letting the employees know which forms of communication are approved by the firm and what they can and cannot do. So that should also be part of a training session for the firm. And also making sure that the firm trading systems can be accessed securely and effectively while being deployed remotely under the BCP. Obviously, that is crucial to a successful compliance program or the firm's trading program to be able to still do that in a remote way. So data security, also very important in that employees need to know that their data is secured and they are accessing information via an encrypted form.
Okay, and finally, let's wrap up here with being proactive.
So I kind of hinted at that in the very beginning as far as what the role of the CCO is and what they need to be doing right now in these unprecedented times of everyone working in a remote way. And, the big fear when people are out of the office, and especially when compliance is not there, is it becomes an out of sight, out of mind situation. So if employees are in their home offices working in their little cocoon and they don't feel that compliance is there to watch what they're doing, then they may be tempted to do something untoward. So knowing that compliance still is watching becomes extremely important right now. And that's what I mean when I say compliance needs to be proactive. In other words, they need to be the ones reaching out, the ones checking in, making sure those meetings take place, which again goes back to tip number 2 on the communications. So knowing what is happening within the firm, knowing how the firm trading is occurring, how employee trading is occurring, how information is being accessed within the firm, and how data is flowing into and out of the firm. Those are all areas that need to be addressed and looked at right now by compliance, and in a proactive way. So they need to be looking at it and then letting the employees and other business managers know that, that they are doing their job, they are looking at these areas, and that keeps them in the loop and helps them be a leader within the firm during this time of this unprecedented pandemic.
All right, Amy, great insight. Thanks for joining us on Trade Talks.
Thank you for having me.
All right, and thanks for joining me. I'm Jill Malandrino, Global Markets Reporter at Nasdaq.